Now it looks like we're live with Great Battles of the American Civil War, Dead of Winter. This is turn 9. How's it going, Pat?
It is going good. How are you doing, Gary?
I'm all right.
Hello, YouTube world.
Anyway, so it's another night turn, so we'll see how far we get here today. But Union has been marching all night, literally around themselves in circles, from what it looks like over here.
Yep, pretty much. So we're ready to go. We're ready to pull. We
are
pre-game made sure we didn't want to lay down any orders, reserve orders or anything like that. So
I believe you won the initiative this time.
I did indeed. I have my little secret all prepared. So I will flip, and our first order is Cheatham.
Okay.
So, all right, Mr. Cheatham. And let's see here. I always ask you this because I'm an idiot. What is stacking again?
In non-march mode, 15 strength points of infantry and one counter of artillery.
And if you have infantry with the artillery?
It's still 15.
15.
But if you have artillery without infantry, then it can stack up to 12.
Okay, got it.
Jordan, how's it going? You should be receiving your shiny new pass back and forth copy of the Supreme Commander, I would estimate Monday. Maybe Tuesday. Mail's slow right now.
Maybe Tuesday.
He lives like an hour from here, so serious discussion was made of just him driving up and handing it over. So for those unaware, I am selling some stuff. There's a Consim World Marketplace Facebook group that's all listed on, or if you want to watch the video version of that presentation, it's in this week's No Enemies Here on Dan's channel. I thought about putting the video on my channel too, but honestly, stuff's going so fast. I've already sold like 3 or 4 of those things that I talked about on Saturday. So by the time I would have gotten it up on my video, it would have a different mix of stuff. Nevertheless, there's some stuff on sale in the Facebook group that's not in the video, like La Bataille de la Moskva, for example, which is another one of the buddies' games that I didn't really feel like dealing with because it is in a Ziploc bag, which was something that it was a standard format for GDW at the time.
Get you guys scrunched. Can you scrunch?
I'm going to sell. I was thinking of selling everything and just buying all the Europa games, really.
You've officially lost your god.
Lost your mind.
All right, so that's that.
I've spent most of yesterday clipping Imperium Romanum 3, which looks good. And there is a vassal module for that, by the way. Excellent. It's the typical decision thing where you got to get it from them, but whatever. It is missing, because I bought it secondhand, it is missing one counter. Attila the Hun is missing.
Gotta have a Hun.
Well, there's one scenario that has Attila in it, and I guess I will have to limit myself to the other 50 plus scenarios. There's a huge scenario selection. I can replicate the counter if it comes to that from the vassal assets if necessary. I don't think I want to even deal with calling decision up and buy in another counter, copy the counter sheet for one counter. I'll make a copy. I'm not going to sell it. Imperium Romanum 2 has been on my shelf since like 1992 or 1993. So I've had it, forever, and I'm not getting rid of the third one either.
All right, Cheatham is done.
All right, so I will draw a chit then.
Go ahead.
That is Confederate March. Do you have any
March from this turn?
All right, nope. Well, put that over
Not
there. Then go ahead and pick one. McCown.
That would be McCown. All right. So let's see. What kind of fun adjusting do you have to do here, Mr. McCown? Yeah, you're fine.
I will say that I don't see any particular problem regarding the Europa series. I've had my public share of complaining about the Europa series. I don't really think that a lot of my complaints are particularly problematic when you're talking about the smaller games like Narvik or Marina Mercure or that kind of thing. It's only when you get into the big to very big games that I think some of those things accrete into significant impediments to enjoyment and play. The error system in Second Front was an absolute nightmare. And it wasn't really the system; it was a scale issue, right? Which is the primary problem that Europa has, is scale problems. There are just too many counters to push around for the simulation value that you're getting out of it. For the air system specifically. For the ground system, that's less true, but there's still scale problems with the ground system.
Which system are
this is Europa. I'm complaining about Europa.
Well, there's a lot to complain about.
Yeah, many decades of complaining has been done.
Now, that's what we wanted to do. And yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. All right. Is there any reason for him to try to change his orders from advance? Oh, Rainsy down there? I don't think so. All right, so that's it for McCown. McCown is done. You may draw.
Another McCown.
Ooh, well, I think McCown's gonna skip.
Okay.
Pass. So let's. I shall pull. Wow. Well, it's Confederate City. Breckenridge. Have you ever known of a ridge named Brecken? Okay.
There's probably one somewhere.
It's probably honestly from Brecken's Ridge or something. Okay.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I think Breckenridge is cool. Yeah. No, Breckenridge is not. Let me. Breckenridge is not so cool.
Oh, and I added another second-hand buy locally this time. I added the very last Great Battles of History title that I actually need, which was Caesar in Alexandria. That means I now have all of the ones that aren't either Gustavus Adolphus or Feudal Japan. and I have one of the feudal Japan ones. And I'll buy the other two if they drop into my lap for relatively cheap price. But all the ones I have that I want to play, I have now. So very happy to complete that series.
Breckenridge is done. So
It's
believe
my
it is
draw.
your draw.
Oh, a Union. Union March. There's nobody under March. Go ahead and draw one.
Another Union. Rousseau.
Where is Rousseau? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's Rousseau. I guess it's mine. Confederate Cleburne.
Well, Cleburne certainly wants to activate. So let's see. Poor Rousseau's like a 1.
Yeah, there's only one guy. There's more coming at dawn, actually. Not a ton more, but a little bit more.
Might as well let's get close. Let's get close to each other, shall we? Alright, that's them guys. Now what about these guys? Actually, we'll... I'll go there. And 1.
Now that unit is that artillery brigade is out of command where it is. Just FYI.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah.
When you're going to
maybe
stay
not
on the
an
ridge,
issue.
when you're going to stay on the ridge and provide support the next day, it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Come here, Polkites.
Jordan, First to Fight's actually First to Fight or Case White, whichever one, is actually one of the better ones. It's a good intro to the series. The First to Fight specifically was intended to serve as an introduction to the series at the time, and it's actually a pretty decent and interesting game on its own. It's not too big. It's like a map or map and a half or something like that, and it doesn't really suffer from many of the foibles of bigger Europa games.
I believe Claiborne is done.
All right, I think it's your pull.
I shall.
Now our next big local game is going to be Hungarian Rhapsody. That's Fry.
'Tis Fry.
I think we're going to activate... Walker's brigade. Just back up just a little bit. Tidy that up a little bit. We're going to do Harlan's brigade will do a rally action.
Okay.
To bring him back up with ammo. And that's it. Fry's done. I think it's my pull.
I think it's mine, actually.
All right, well, go ahead.
If you want to get all technical. No, it's your pull.
Okay.
I picked Fry.
Random event. Roll a d20 or d10.
I shall.
Be hard to roll
Why?
a d20. No random event.
I'll
My
beat
pick.
your armor class.
Cleburne.
Cleburne. Well, if we're doing what we're doing, there's always room for a second activation, right? So, all right, let's see.
Now, those guys that are out of those individual units that are out of command will get one less activation than their division.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, so
Talking about geography at this point. So let's see. Actually, I think we'll move this guy over here. Counterclockwise, actually. Yeah. Okay. And I mean, you get in this land of, do you want to use your artillery? Never having played a game in the series before, I'm guessing there are many instances where the artillery's out of command. Because if you're gonna
but you could still fire. I mean, you have, if your orders need to change, then it's a problem, and you do get one less activation.
Right. What, the whole brigade or just?
No, just that unit.
Okay.
The rest of it's assuming the rest of the brigade's in command.
So that, I think we're snug as bugs in a rug with old Claiborne there.
All
So
right.
yeah, we are. So, all right.
All right, I believe it is your draw.
Rousseau.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's it for Rousseau.
Your pull. Fry. No.
No, that was Fry's previous chit. Kennett. All right, this is actually occurring this time. Let me find the guys.
Hey, John Longshore. Yeah, I hear you, Simo. I just don't do the Fulda Gap. There's a lot of, and I'm sure, people like, in Finland or whatever, they're still hold a lot of fascination. A lot of Americans too still love it. For me, it's the war that never happened. So even in my like early teens, there was an interest in it, but now I'm just like, it's why one of the reasons I designed Attleboro, right? I'm far more interested in conflicts that actually occurred, because even when you go back and you look at like what we know and what we don't know about, Soviet and U.S. compositions, plans, weapons, etc., it's still basically alternate history. And there's a part of me, the part of me that was in the army, that the Fulda Gap's long and dead. In fact, hanging on to that doctrine and that theater and that way of war at that time did nothing but hurt the army for 10 to 15 years longer than it should have. So I just, under, and then on top of it, it's like, oh, Under the Iron Sky is just basically, what, Mark
The
Herman's
next
war.
war.
Yeah, next war,
Yeah.
Mark Herman's game.
But I liked that game, actually.
Right.
Which is that's how it came up, right? So.
Right. Yeah, but like I said, there was a time in like 1985 or even like in 1992 where I might be interested in it, but now I'm just like, it's just, people digging up old orders of battle and, fighting the war that never happened.
I have it coming as well, so. All right, that's it for Kenneth. So I think it's my draw, right?
I don't know.
All right,
go ahead.
I'll just draw. Kenneth. All right, that was easy.
But tomato to each their own. Yeah. Whoa. Yeah. I'm talking. What I mean by this is speculative Cold War, the war that never happened. Seema, the pretend war. And there's a part, especially in a lot of like old retired military guys and some people that are just into military sims. It's like, boy, can't we just fight a simple conventional war like in the and we never fought wars like that. We fought wars like Vietnam. So,
Yeah, it is more than just folding. I mean, it's like the entire theater, but and it there's folks that feel it's the definitive game on the topic at its scale right now. So we will assuredly get some coverage from me when it shows up, and then of course there'll be coverage of the Frank Chadwick Third World War whenever that comes out from Decision or from Compass. Sorry. All right, I believe it is your draw at this time.
I shall draw.
At one point, and I mean, obviously, that point was in the late 70s and early 80s when that was incredibly topical. That was a really hot subject for war games, right? As you can understand. And then it cooled way off for a long time after the wall went down. And now in the last 3 or 4 years, I think it's taken off again as a topic of interest. I think in part due to nostalgia. I'm figuring that the two things that I have on order on that subject will literally be all I ever need on that subject.
Right. I'm happy. I played the Next War. I played Third World War back in the day. I played Firefight endlessly. I just have zero interest in it anymore. Let's see.
It's certainly true to say that there are many historical subjects that are not hypothetical that don't get covered. Sometimes not at all by war games. So, right. I mean,
it's one of the things that's endlessly, it's a pet peeve, endlessly bothered me about like operational treatments of the Vietnam War, right? People keep doing endless pull the gap pretend stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But nobody ever made that game I wanted, which is, hey, can we look at this conflict in a operational way? All right. So, routine. No. I guess that's good enough now. We'll just leave you as you were. That's good enough for you now.
That's one of the reasons I would like to. Simo, I don't intend to buy Iron Curtain at this time. I mean, I reserve the right to change my mind, as always, but. And it looks like a nice little package, right? It's gonna have a lot of versatility. It's got a bunch of different conceptual situations in it. It's relatively compact, which to my mind, an SCS game ought to be relatively compact. A map, maybe two maps, but all of the ones that I like are actually one map. So I think it's going to be pretty good. I just don't know that I'm interested enough in the subject to jump on that particular horse personally. And by the time it comes out, I will have both Under an Iron Sky and the Frank Chadwick Third World War, which Compass is also talking about expansion material for that. So I intend to be more than covered when it comes to that. And I've got a lot of stuff. For somebody that's trying to clear space, I've sure got a lot of stuff coming.
You're just clearing space. You could buy more shit.
Well, exactly. So, I mean, I got, a couple of things. Like Samurai, my buddy kind of brought it over and said, oh, yeah, I want to sell this stuff. And I'm like, well, I'll just take that. Bruce, I'm pretty sure that that game exists, so it is probably from Decision Games.
Oh, there he is. Hey, Bruce. That's Bruce. The game you're describing is called a card-driven point-to-point game. So let's see here. Yeah, we'll just scooch up. Scooch up, y'all. Y'all. My poor orphans. I hear you going pop up.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for stopping in, Bruce. Nevertheless, I do have an interest on the subject of point-to-point card-driven games. Brotherhood and Unity showed up a couple days ago, and it looks more interesting than I expected it to. So, yeah, John Longshore, you're better off just hopping in to the current stream.
Yeah.
And we're not moving so fast that you're going to have missed a ton other than our scintillating chit-chat.
Yeah, it's not that scintillating. All right, thanks, Bruce. Thanks for showing up. Yeah, he was emailing me, so I said, come say hi. All right, so I am done with Breckenridge. And I don't know whose draw it is.
I don't know. All right, that's fine. Shouldn't matter. Kennett. All right, so in that case, oops, let's not do that. It's 10 movement on that. That's interesting. All right. Well, it's horse cavalry, so I guess it's not that surprising. All right, that's it for Kennett. That's Kennett's third, so let me go ahead and... I'll pull in a second here. Hold on. All right, I had to mark fatigue on him. Breckenridge.
Breckenridge is done for the day, for the hour. So I shall. let's see. All right, I'll throw that up there. All right, that's that. And Claiborne did go twice, and McCown. All right, I'll pull. Flip. Davis.
I'm not sure Davis has much to do.
In 50 years,
Davis
though,
does in fact not have anything to do.
in 50 years, though, if there's still war games, they'll look at like U.S. Soviet Cold War in Europe akin to like a hypothetical war between Britain and America over Oregon. So yeah.
Why?
It's like what? That never happened. So let's see.
I will say that I mean, if you're talking about like Europa Fire in the East, Scorched Earth, and the Urals, whether you need the Urals or not, it's there if you want it. It is an experience that is not something you're going to get anywhere else, right? You're not going to be able to play out the entire East Front for the entire war on that scale anywhere else. That's a completely valid point.
You finished with Davis, right?
Yep.
All right. Flip. Well, you've got Rousseau again.
This would be Rousseau's third. He is not going to go. So I'll draw. Cleburne.
That would be his third. He is not going to go. I shall draw.
Negley's... boy. Okay.
Negley's a mess.
Negley is a huge mess. But nevertheless, he's going to activate. So... Nobody's got, like...
I like pieces of Europa. Like, I still think their Finest Hour is one of the best Battle of Britain games ever.
It probably is.
Right? I prefer... I'm not a fan of the Alan Emmerich endless creating it, because a lot of the games run even, and it's just like filling out, it becomes an exercise in like filling out space on the map that you need. And I prefer just Frank Chadwick standalone titles,
Well, and I mean, let's face it, they are super uneven, and they don't really work together either.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's it's an endless project, and Frank backed out of it.
Oh yeah, relatively early actually, like right around the early '80s, late '70s or early '80s. Frank could pretty much wash his hands of that.
Right.
We're close to being done here. We're gonna go.
My point is, Simo, you don't have any battle histories. You don't know how anything happened operationally. You don't know how things work. You can't get to any sort of granularity on it. So it's all just an exercise in hypotheticals, like purely hypothetical. Sure, like you and I could play a good game on the Battle of Gettysburg, for instance, and it could go ahistorical, but we know how units performed, we know how equipment worked, we know what worked or didn't work, we can dig into the sources, You can't do that for a conflict or a battle that didn't happen.
No, but what would be interesting, actually, now that you put it that way, it would be interesting to go through, and especially like mid-'70s, early SPI type efforts like that, the lighter ones are the ones I'm talking about, so you wouldn't have to sink tons of time into this, to go back and then evaluate in retrospect how reasonable or ridiculous the resulting output is. That would be interesting, I think.
We know that with the next war, which is a good, noble effort, right?
Yeah.
And I, the problem with it is they completely got how everybody completely miscalculated and misjudged how effective U.S. technological superiority was going to be in the air, and how ineffective ADF systems were going to be made almost moot by the technology that was available. So they were completely dead wrong. The other thing I hate about those scenarios is they make very particular assumptions. They don't make assumptions of, hey, what if nukes start getting used? There are a lot of political decisions that get left out. It's
Yeah.
just, the guy who likes Armored Division's fantasy scenario.
Well, they did have nuclear rules in one of those SPI games. This may have been the East is Red. That I might be misremembering that.
Yeah,
that
but
did
I don't-
say
I don't
douse the
mean
map in lighter fluid and set a match to it.
Right, exactly. I don't mean tactical usage. I mean, hey, what are the strategic global effects of what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, it's just another way to say, hey, people who love Battle of the Bulgy tanky things, for their own purposes. And
All
that's
right, Negley's done.
Negley is done.
So
I believe
go
it
ahead
is
and
your
draw.
flip. Oh, sure. Flip.
Breckenridge.
Breckenridge is not going to go a second time. So over to you.
Wheeler.
Wheeler is going to do something.
Be curious to see what Wheeler does in this case, actually, since there's... let me fix facing on this one guy, but...
Wheeler's going to
obviously not facing that way.
Wheeler's actually going to get out of the way. That's a lot of what Wheeler's going to end up doing. So first, we're going to go... So that's 5 for everybody. And I'll take it from there. 5. Six, 7, 8, 9. Six, 7, 8, 9. Okay. But you guys are cool.
Now, I don't know if I mentioned our next local face-to-face game is going to be Hungarian Rhapsody, which I think is going to end up starting not this week, but next week, because one of our guys is out of town. But I'm looking forward to that. It looks pretty interesting to me. Now, how much fun it will be to play, because it's gonna given the topic, I expect it to be. Expect there to be some rapid movements early on, and then for it to slog down big time, which is kind of what happened. But and I don't know how much fun that's going to be to play, but we'll see. I am looking forward to it either way. And none of our local guys have done any playtesting on it. We all have done playtesting at this point for Third Winter, but. Quite a bit of playtesting, actually, but not for Hungarian Rhapsody.
And let me get a little closer. Oh, a little closer.
I will tell you that, generally speaking, I think OCS works better on the East Front than it does elsewhere. And I think really that's just a function of it was designed to replicate that particular theater more so than the kind of things that we would see in, say, Beyond the Rhine, where, frankly, Beyond the Rhine's pretty busted out of the box. There's some designer, I guess, official errata suggestions to maybe fix it, but you're going to end up with, it's very, very difficult to end up with a historical, even early game, say 10 turns in. It's very, very difficult to get something out of that game that looks historical. Now, on the other hand, like the Sicily games are both very good, I think. Tunisia's pretty good. Reluctant Enemies I just got relatively recently, haven't played it. It's definitely a simplified, it's not the kind of OCS game that you're going to keep coming back to if you're an OCS person.
Tunisia, I love the campaign, but it let me down because it doesn't do the air, it doesn't do the naval, it doesn't do the special, all the things. Like you said, it's the inherentness of OCS's East Front approach. Doesn't get after a lot of things that were important in that. You know what I mean? As a theater.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you have air in there, and OCS air is not that abstract, but you don't really do anything with it in Tunisia, too.
And it was incredibly important. It was also incredibly important for supply. They're just mechanics that are missing in OCS, that either get fobbed off to abstraction in Tunisia or just don't even get dealt with because it's built for the Eastern Front.
Yeah, or, I mean, the same thing applies to the airdrop, the paradrop rules in Beyond the Rhine, right? When you play Beyond the Rhine, it becomes very obvious that the airdrop rules create you can't do things they historically did with Airborne in that game because that's not how the airdrop rules work.
Right. It's one of the things that bugs me about like paradrops in Tunisia and OCS. Right. There were 2 attempted commando landings by the Brits. Okay. 5 that I can just think of off the top of my head. Independent parachute battalion landings, to try to get a rapid advance early on, as well. The Germans thought about doing a couple of similar paradrops of their own, okay, and the Italians in the Commando Supremo and 90th Corps planned to use the San Marco Marine Brigade, which are basically commandos, to think about doing their own commando landings. So all these things were on the table. OCS just doesn't deal with it in Tunisia. Dean just hand waves it. Things that happened at a battalion level. You know what I mean? Historical things that occurred get hand waved. So that's cool, but these are things that were very important to this theater, and they get hand waved because they don't fit into the whole Eastern Front moving T around methodology that OCS does, is its wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So, all right, I am done with the cavalry, and you see what we've decided to do.
Okay. All right,
so I don't know whose draw it is.
I'll draw. It's Withers. So, and I say this as somebody that likes OCS a lot. So years ago, this would have been in maybe the mid-90s, maybe a little later than that, there was this philosophical idea in role-playing games that you could classify role-playing games as gamist, simulationist, or narrativist. And while some people took that way too seriously and wrote like academic papers about it and stuff, it's nevertheless sort of useful descriptively. And I think to some extent, conceptually, those labels apply to war games as well. With the caveat that there are very few role-playing games that are really simulationist, there are relatively few war games that are really strong narrative games where that's the main mechanical focus, right? There are some that I can think of, like your B-17 Queen of the Skies, a lot of the solitaire games, that kind of thing. But OCS is a very gamist system, right? It's a puzzle. You're there to what brings you to the OCS table and what keeps people coming back is the puzzle of working out, here's where the attack's got to go. Here's the weak points in the line. Here's the supply. You have all these different puzzle pieces that you have to then assemble all at the same time so that you can make the offensive happen, right? It's a pretty bad simulation system. If simulation is your goal, OCS is not particularly good at it, right? It's great to play. I love OCS, but it's not a particularly great simulation.
To me, it's more a matter of, I think all games have a combination of the two factors
absolutely.
That you described, right?
Absolutely.
For me, it's that what it's asking me to do with the puzzle pieces in theaters that aren't Case Blue, it's like they're leaving out half the puzzle pieces. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
They're saying, do this.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're like, but there's all this other stuff that's really important, and they're like, no, no, these are the puzzle pieces that we use.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yes.
basically the game has a thesis about supply and supply lines and distance from supply and moving supply
Yes.
being the absolute key above all key to warfare in the Second World War. The way they represent it and the problems they pose are the problems of the Eastern Front.
Yes.
So and it's abstractions of things like national differences regarding artillery. Everything else is done in simplistic ways that work for the Eastern Front, but don't work for the other front. And I'm just giving some anecdotes, but it's it's like everything, and it continues over to. It's why I have case of the ass with as you well know, with BCS, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's basically a game. It's kind of the same thing. They made a game for the Battle of the Bulge,
Yeah.
and
Well, it's very much the same thing. I mean,
right.
here are the pieces that you have to use to simulate this particular thing, even though they're not the thing. That's not the topic that it was designed to simulate in the first place, and so it doesn't really do that good a job. I mean, it kind of works.
Right.
But it doesn't do a completely satisfying job.
And it's not at all about scale, Simo. When you talk like Tunisia or the Western Front, you're talking about just the same sort of density of troops. The problem is the way supplies, every theater is going to be different. Okay. And the way supply gets run based on geography, based on operational problems, based on types of forces and capabilities available. Air is used by the Russians and the Germans differently used by the Germans differently on the Eastern Front and in Tunisia, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So the game doesn't provide enough granularity outside of the Eastern Front. Yeah, it's why we're getting back. It's sometimes we deal with the same topics again and again in these streams, but they're fun to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the end state of this is where systems get you. Eventually a system becomes a limitation. It should. So to me, OCS is a great system for playing. Hey, I can learn these rules and I can play the Eastern Front, and play an excellent game.
Mm-hmm.
But it falls apart when it deals with the other theaters.
Yeah, and in fairness, let's say you took the Vance von Borries East Front system and tried to make a D-Day game out of it, it would be
right.
Probably not particularly effective, right?
Right. And that's kind of my problem with the Dean philosophy. I admire Dean; he's a big influence on.
Oh
me,
yeah.
Right. But my problem with it is that idea of like we'll just we'll do this system and then we'll just hand wave a lot of stuff away when the reality of the conflict matches up against the system. And that's I'm not interested. I'd rather play, like, for instance, like I've told you, the best Tunisia game to this day I've still played is take Frank Chadwick's Bloody Kasserine and Race for Tunis, and you can kind of combine them. The best Tunisian campaign I've ever played. You end up getting a lot of troops in Tunisia. People don't realize that in terms of density of air power, it was the Stalingrad of the Luftwaffe for a reason. So, all right. Anyway,
where were we? You're done with Withers?
Or
have you not started Withers yet?
I have not started Withers.
Oh, okay. See
all
what
right.
happens.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. All right. Let's see here. Come here, Mr. Withers. 2, 4, 6.
John Longshore, you're absolutely right. But I will say that, like, the late war OCS titles, I think handle that pretty well. Having played Third Winter, which is we've played like a campaign of Third Winter, which is pretty much late war. Say 43 is when it starts, and Baltic Gap. I think it works pretty well where the Soviets have their own capabilities that are distinct from German capabilities, and they play very differently. The two sides play very differently. which is one reason I think why we haven't really seen much from Barbarossa from the OCS group, because I think, generally speaking, I think Barbarossa would be pretty unfun to play in OCS.
Unfun. That's a good word.
And there's been talk about it. One of the guys in Ohio was actually working on an OCS Barbarossa at one point, and I think it it kind of just evaporated the idea. He had a counter mix and everything for it, and it just I think they tried to play it and it was shit, and they decided, yeah, we're just not gonna, this isn't gonna work. Which I think is the right answer. I think it's not gonna work.
Right,
So
right. Which I, you know, and not everybody can do this. So what I'm saying is like, you know, yeah, what I'm about to say is like pie in the sky, but not really pie in the sky, because some people can design. So it's like, so don't give up. Design your own Barbarossa system. You know?
yeah, Jordan, I think Tunisia was, I think, the third or fourth game in the series originally. It was really early. Never played the original Tunisia. I've only played Tunisia 2. And it works fine. I mean, it works fine. It works better on the East Front. But Tunisia 2 is fine. I have no particular issues with it. I will play it again at some point.
The problem I have is knowing the history, how much is just not done and left out.
Yeah. Then that's not wrong. But again, your OCS is about the puzzle, right? And you play the puzzle with the pieces that you have.
Yeah. I don't right, and I'm not a puzzle guy.
A lot of people aren't.
I love puzzles. I want the puzzle of figuring out what I want my operations to be when they make historical sense. So if I'm going to go through all the effort to play that level of simulation, you know what I mean, learn the rules, something that gritty. Boy, if you're not really dealing with the theater on the theater's own terms, then I just don't really have time for it. You know what I mean? That's kind of my take on that. Yeah, it's like, well, I could just as easily play another ahistorical, quickie, Tunisia sort of game with a whole lot less rules overhead, because you're kind of at the end of the day doing the same thing. All right, so what am I going to do with these guys one by one? I think we're going to go. And he has to stop. Yeah, I can get a straight on shot on that guy from there. All right. That's it for Mr. Withers. Mr. Withers is done. Jordan. So Tunisia 2 is also a big cleanup. The original Tunisia actually had like order of battle problems, like massive order of battle problems. It's not a good game. They got a lot of things wrong. On the way in the Wayback Machine, way back. The original Tunisia. And you could argue that had a lot to do with it being the first thing that they ever did after doing some East Front stuff, is why it really does show a lot of the weaknesses of that. They cleaned up the OOB with Tunisia too, but they didn't deal with, they're just not dealing with other things in the other problems in the rule system. The way it's presenting you that as a theater commander at that level is not the way that conflict was fought. You're not worried about moving T around. You're worried about air support air support in different areas, who has air superiority at different times. Air is such a factor in that campaign. Who do you got now, Gary?
Sorry, Negley's done.
All right.
I muted because I had to sneeze.
All right.
So go ahead and draw. Oh, Negley again. Negley does. There's no reason for Negley to go again.
All right.
So McCown.
Still got one available. So let's see if you've done anything.
The trouble with that topic, I think, is that the French collapse in 1940 was in part a political collapse, right? It's not like the French all... I mean, I know we love to tell that joke where all the French immediately gave up and run away, but that's not really what happened. The French did fight very bravely, tactically, in many cases. There's no way to simulate that in an operational war game, right? Or nobody's done it, let me put it that way.
You could... The problem is everyone wants to do France like all France, like the Battle of France, right? So you can do some individual actions.
Oh, yeah.
And really nail them. But when you do all of France, you also can't get across... We're talking things that games historically find it very difficult to do, like reflect command and control problems, reflect problems with So I'll give you an example. So one of the biggest advantages the Germans had was how they coordinated air power at different levels, right? So we just discussed how OCS really just doesn't do air that well with a lot of granularity, right? So if you're going to do air, if you're going to reflect national differences in how you coordinate air power, then you need to do air well, right? So it's why to this day, once again Chadwick, I forget that's another really good one. The Europa one for the Battle of France, he does really well. But Frank always did command and control and like air coordination, at what levels, etc. Fairly decently.
Yeah, I can believe that would be a pretty good title in Europa, actually.
Yeah, but you follow what I'm saying. So if that's like a prime reason, one of like the 5 reasons military historians return to again and again as to why this nation collapsed more quickly, right? If you're doing a game that emphasizes ground stuff and you're really trying to abstract and not get into air whatsoever, then you're going to end up with a clash of ground stuff that doesn't reflect that important factor. So you're going to end up with France holding out. You know what I mean? Stuff going askew. Yeah. Historically. So
I think it's your draw.
Yeah, I am working on McCown.
Okay.
I'm doing that whole thing of just eyeballing him.
All right. Well, while you're looking at that, I'm gonna go hit the head real quick. I'll be right back.
I will have to do that soon. There. All right, McCown, you're fine. Well, I guess you could go there. All right. And you could go there. No.
I am back. Funnily enough, the 2 Europa games that I would kind of be interested in are Fall of France and Their Finest Hour. I am not in any sense willing to pay what they go for, however.
Yeah, it's crazy people talk. All right, so I am done. I've done whatever nudginess I plan to do with Macau.
All right, I will draw. We have drawn wood. Wood will take a we'll do a rally action right here. And let me just check.
I need to use a little boys' room. I'll be back in like 5 to 10.
All right.
Nobody else of mine is going to go unless I forget if they're in there or not. Just hold up if you pull Cheatham or Withers. But other than that, they're you know.
All right, that's good. That's fine.
I'll be back.
All right, so that's it for wood. Next is going to be Palmer. And Palmer needs to go very badly. So, we'll do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see. 6. Yeah, we should be okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. And these guys are obviously facing the wrong way, so I'm going to fix that. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we can do it. And I'm going to fix wood too. Let me do wood first because we're over here. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so along with fixing wood, because wood was mixed up, that pretty much takes care of Palmer as well. So drawing one more, we have Van Cleve, who does indeed have things to do. All right, I think that's good for Van Cleve. Next, and this is the last chit, is Fry. Does Fry have anything to do? Not. I'll relocate Fry himself. But no, he does not really have anything to do. So we are... shoot. I missed some of Palmer. Let's extract him from this situation here. All right, so we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 0, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And other than fixing stuff that I had to do repeatedly, John Longshore, it depends on the battle. I mean, there was definitely a lot of massed artillery at Gettysburg, for example. In this particular battle, we don't have, well, at least not on the map right now, at least not that I have, any like corps artillery or anything like that. This is all brigade artillery. And while some of the brigades do have 2 batteries attached to them, it's hard to coordinate that in this system unless you have, as you do in the Gettysburg game, like an artillery commander with army artillery or corps artillery, which is, like I said, is the case with Gettysburg. So, we're pretty much done with the turn. Also, I mean, out here, out west, in a lot of these places, you had terrain that wasn't necessarily optimal for artillery. I want to say it was quite a bit of artillery, quite a bit of corps artillery at Antietam as well, just going from memory from the order of battle. And I just haven't really seen that here. Now, some of that is because we're playing the meeting engagement, and at least on the Union side, all this stuff's trickling in piece by piece, and there's still major components of the Union Army that are not on the map yet. There's still, 2/3 of the right wing that's not on the map yet. So, and there's part of the center and part of the left wing that aren't on the map yet. And a day in, the cavalry just came on. So, it'll be an interesting thing to discuss at a later point. As to whether I like this meeting engagement scenario or not. I do like the system. We're done.
I actually...
Every other chit was mine.
The jury's still out for me on this scenario, but I think it's acceptable because there's so many days to it.
Yeah. We haven't wrecked it. So...
Yeah. So,
but we're done with all the remaining chits were mine. So other than the fact that I had to go back and fix Palmer, I'm all done.
Okay.
So in that case, next is the commander movement phase. I don't see. Let me get these guys off the roads. Although it's smart to keep them on the roads, to be honest. Do that. Do that. Everybody else is pretty much fine. So if you need to move anybody commander-wise, go ahead.
Yeah, let me eyeball. We're coming up on dusk. What's command range at the dusk turns?
I think it's half still. Let me check that. Maybe not. Hold on. Let me check that. Yes, that's correct. The command ranges are halved dusk and dawn.
Let's see here.
And our visibility is going to be 2 hexes in this next turn.
1 hex. Remember fog.
I thought it was 2. Let me check that. Hold on.
It's in the scenario-specific rules. I will look it up.
Yeah. Due to fog and darkness, visibility for the 0600 and 1700 turns each day is 2 hexes.
Ah, 2 hexes. Okay, I thought
Yeah.
it was 1. I thought it was just like night.
No, that's
So 2 hexes means you have to be 1 intervening hex.
correct.
Got it. Okay. All right. So
And -2 to fire. So, -2 DRM to fire. All right, so I think that's it. We don't really have anything else that needs to get done. So I'm going to move. Do we want to do another turn, I guess is my next question.
well, next turn the attack is going to start.
I figured.
Right.
Well, then let's
So-
prep that turn, and then we can do it starting next Sunday.
Let's set everything up. Let's
Yeah.
do our AMs and EMs and whatnot.
All right. First thing we're gonna do is roll initiative. You're gonna get a +1 to that.
Looks good for me.
Ah, look at that. It was close. Oh well. All right. So Confederate initiative. Then we do activation efficiency. So let me get mine set up real quick.
Let me go to the- Pull these guys down. Let me get organized.
All right. Well, cup's all yours whenever you want it.
Got a system that keeps me from making mistakes. All right, so let me do that, and then let me go here, and let me drop these guys here, and move these down, and
And I'm gonna make some outside the vessel module die rolls.
then let me take these guys and put them in there. Now let me empty this thing out. Then I don't need the draw cup anymore for right now. Goes there. Goes up there. There. All right. It's going to be clone. It's going to be 2 clones. What's him again? That will be my secret friend. Flip. Flip.
I thought we fixed this thing where Johnson didn't have an activation marker. I thought Alan fixed this.
I'm pretty sure he did.
Did you see it in your version of the module?
I bet you're using the old version. Naughty. Let me see.
I didn't think so.
Is it in the USA OOB maybe? Where are the AMs and EMs in this thing again?
We're in the AMs and EMs screen.
Let me see.
I thought I updated it, but maybe I didn't.
Yep. There certainly is Johnson in mine. I bet you didn't delete the old module before you...
I bet I didn't. Well...
I should give Vassal lessons to people, like how to constantly play it like that. Like, yeah, if you update, you got to delete the old one. Alright, so boom, I'll throw those guys in there. Alright, we'll throw the March flip. The random event in there, flip. I would note down Johnson and then do all that altering before we start. You know what I mean? I'll load the module next time we play. I'll be the guy.
All right,
and
that's cool.
It'll just be there, but you got to remind yourself. I might forget. All right, and that's gonna be my initiative guy. All right, I've loaded the Confederate AM.
All right. I haven't even looked at my numbers yet, so let me see.
What?
I'm just looking at the numbers.
That sounds like the disgusted laugh, not the happy laugh.
That sounds like I've got a bunch of ones again. Yes, because that's exactly what it sounds like.
The scoffing laugh, I believe it's called. The scoff.
All right, I'm not going to put mine in the pool yet because I'll have to fix it. I'm using Morton's Pioneers right now because that's an activation marker that I'm not using to sub for Johnson.
Got it.
And then I'll fix the module between now and next Sunday.
There's going to be a lot of attacking. next we're gonna. This has been like a lot of maneuvering,
Mhm.
and then nighttime's been a lot of like noodling, and
Yeah.
I think next turn's just going to be a lot of slamming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very plausibly.
Which is fun, you know.
Mhm.
We've
Well-
been doing a lot of dancing and not a lot of fighting. So
That's true.
that'll be-
All right. I'm going to save it too just as an emergency, but you go ahead and save it, and we'll start from your save next week.
And it's 0600, right?
I'm calling it start turn 10 action phase.
All right. Game turn 10. Save. Okay.
Now, fortunately, I did use overnight to neaten up my lines, which were in I mean, they're not like everything I would like them to be, but they're not like in total disarray like they were at dusk. So
Right. I'd like to think I made somewhat good use of my time. I mean, obviously, I've got one main axis of attack, which I don't know. It should be fascinating or interesting because you're gonna have some flank on me there.
yeah,
So I don't know how that's gonna go.
flanking fire is flanking. I mean, it's fire. You get a bonus for it. But 6 a.m. I almost said 6 a.m. That would be ambitious.
That is not gonna happen.
Absolutely not. So 6 p.m. tomorrow, and then hopefully we'll get back to playing on Friday. And the plan is still to do No Peace Without Spain next. We have gotten a couple of rescheduling events have pushed us back, but I'm looking forward to that.
It's all my fault. I had a friend show up over the weekend, and that was nice. So thank you everyone for
Understood.
showing up. We'll see you tomorrow.
Yep, see you tomorrow. Stay tuned to the channel. There's other scheduled pre-recorded videos coming this week as well.